Valley Forge was not a battlefield, but it may have been the greatest test of the Revolution. Nearly 12,000 soldiers marched into camp that winter. They were exhausted, hungry, and clothed in rags. Shoes had worn away, and soldiers left bloody footprints in the snow. Huts were built from logs, smoke from damp fires stung their eyes, and disease spread through the crowded quarters. Dysentery, typhus, and smallpox killed more men than British muskets ever had. By spring, nearly 2,000 soldiers would be gone. And yet, through it all, Washington refused to leave. He lived among them, enduring the same freezing nights, eating the same meager rations. His men saw him not as a distant general, but as one of their own. Outside the camp, whispers grew louder. Members of Congress criticized Washington's leadership. Some even plotted to replace him with other generals. After all, the army had lost New York and Philadelphia. What proof was there that Washington could win? But inside the camp, his soldiers knew the truth. They saw his determination, his patience, and his quiet resolve. Washington understood something critical. Wars aren't only won with weapons. They're won with willpower, the belief that victory is possible, even when all evidence says otherwise. And then, when things seemed darkest, help arrived in the most unexpected form. Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben. He was a former Prussian officer, flamboyant and fiery, with a sharp tongue and little English. When he cursed, his aides had to translate his anger into commands. But beneath his eccentric personality, von Steuben carried something the Continental Army desperately needed: professional military training. Day after day, in the snow and mud, von Steuben drilled the soldiers. He taught them how to march in formation, how to handle their muskets with speed, how to fight not as scattered individuals, but as a single, unified army. What emerged from Valley Forge was not the ragtag group that had stumbled into camp in December. By the time spring came, Washington commanded a disciplined, organized force, an army that could stand toe-to-toe with the British on the battlefield. Meanwhile, outside the frozen hills of Pennsylvania, the war itself was shifting. In October 1777, far to the north, American forces scored a stunning victory at the Battle of Saratoga. For the first time, a British army had surrendered. That victory sent shockwaves across the Atlantic. In France, leaders who had quietly supported the revolution suddenly saw opportunity. Maybe, just maybe, the Americans could actually win. And so in 1778, France formally entered the war, bringing money, weapons, and most importantly, the power of the French Navy. Suddenly, Britain wasn't just fighting rebellious colonies. It was facing an international coalition. Soon, Spain and the Dutch Republic joined in, stretching Britain's forces across the globe. A colonial uprising had become a world war. With new training and new allies, Washington's army faced its first major test at the Battle of Monmouth in June 1778. Under blistering summer heat, the Americans fought the British to a standstill. They didn't crumble, they didn't flee. For Washington, it was proof that Valley Forge had changed everything. The Continental Army was no longer just a desperate band of rebels. It was a real fighting force, hardened by suffering, trained by professionals, and strengthened by international support. Looking back, Valley Forge might seem like just one chapter in a long war. But in truth, it was the turning point. It was where an army that could barely survive became an army that could win. It was where Washington proved not only his leadership, but his loyalty to his men. And it was where the revolution transformed from a fragile rebellion into a global struggle for independence. The British still had superior numbers, weapons, and resources. But after Valley Forge, after Saratoga, and after France joined the fight, the balance had shifted. For the first time, the idea of victory was not a distant dream. It was within reach.